Transformations, Women, Gender, and Psychology, 3rd edition by Mary Crawford. Chapter 6, continued. Intersectionality and Gender Typing. Roxanne Donovan was born in the West Indian nation of Guyana. Like most Guyanas, Roxanne is multiracial, a combination of African, European, South Asian, Hispanic, and indigenous heritage. As a child, she had never thought about race until she moved with her family to the U.S. At the age of 8 and was constantly asked, "What are you?" and "Are you black?" One day, a teacher told the class to raise their hands when their racial group was called. Roxanne did not know what to do, so she raised her hand when the teacher said white, and when she said black and Hispanic. Roxanne was ridiculed even by her best friend, a black girl. Much later, she realized that her friend might have felt betrayed, might have thought that Roxanne was trying to deny her African heritage. As Roxanne's story shows, issues of skin color and physical appearance may prompt children to develop gendered racial identities. In a focus group, studies of African American women, one participant remembered realizing she was black. About the same time I started realizing that I was a girl. About the same time I started realizing that my hair wasn't straight, and I had a wide nose and full lips. Accounts like these remind us that there is no such thing as a generic girl or boy. Most research on child development has been done with white middle-class samples. It's only recently that researchers have asked about more diverse children. In the study, 229 African American, Mexican American, and Dominican American children who were followed each year from ages 3 to 5. Their gendered stereotype clothings, choices, dress-up play, toy play, and gender segregation turned out to be quite similar to the patterns seen in previous studies with white kids of the same age. The little boys were tough guys. The little boys wore tough guy clothes and dressed up as superheroes, and the little girls wore pink headbands and dressed up as princesses. We shouldn't conclude from studies like these, however, that ethnicity doesn't matter. A child's socialization is affected not only by gender, but also by ethnicity and social class, and these may be intertwined. Parents' attitude about genders are often based on their ethnic groups, cultural heritage. For example, Asian American families may retain the tradition that women should be nurturing and home-oriented and that men should be strong and stoic, but also family-oriented, and these ideas are still passed on to Asian American children. When a sample of Latinas aged 20 to 45 were asked in-depth interviews what their parents taught them about how girls and boys should behave, the majority recalled traditional role expectations. Their brothers were granted more freedom, while the girls were expected to help with housework, learn to cook, and behave properly. A second large sample of Latina college students supported these findings and showed that gender socialization messages were usually conveyed by the same gendered parent. Fathers taught boys what was expected of them, and mothers taught girls. In African American families, extended family relatives and neighbors are often very involved in the children's lives, forming an extended community of discipline and guidance. Just over half of all African American children are raised by a single parent, mother who works outside the home. Therefore, African American children see women as both providers and caretakers, which may be particularly important for girls. Several studies show that African American girls and women do less gender stereotyping and hold less stereotypical attitudes than their European American counterparts, and less than African American boys and men. When African Americans are compared with European Americans from single mother homes, the differences are smaller. Thus, these ethnic groups' differences may be due to growing up in different kinds of family structures. Social class differences in African American households may also create different gender socialization patterns. In an interview study of a class diverse group of African American parents, there was generally strong support for gender equality. Most parents stressed that they had high educational goals for both boys and girls, and they expected both their sons and daughters to learn independence and equality of roles. As one mother said, "I will definitely teach my son that men and women are equal. He is not the head of anybody. His wife will always have input and say so in whatever is going on in their lives, and he needs to know that. When we were growing up, boys washed dishes, boys cooked, girls washed dishes, girls cooked. My mother taught us pretty equally to do everything, just in case you were on your own, you wouldn't have to depend on somebody." However, some of the family studies were newly arrived in the middle class. They had come from low-income families or were less educated than others in the sample. These parents gave more mixed messages to their children. For example, one mother said that she wanted her daughter to be a warrior for racial justice, and also that she wanted her to be respectable, sit properly, avoid being loud, and act like a lady. Fathers in this group were more likely to be worried that their sons would become homosexuals if they were not taught traditional masculinity. This study suggested that African American parents' support for gender equality depends on how secure they feel in their middle class status. More secure families were more able to take the risk of raising gender flexible children. Gender, children, and poverty. The U.S. is a wealthy nation, and the poverty that exists in the midst of the wealth is often invisible. More than 1 in 5 American children live in poverty. Poor children face more obstacles to healthy development, both in their social environment and in their physical environment. Children from low-income families are exposed to more violence at home, in their neighborhood, and at school than those from middle-income families. They are more likely to experience parents' divorce, family breakups, and foster care, and are 2.5 times more likely to develop mental health problems. Poverty makes it difficult or impossible for parents to provide for their children's needs. Poor parents are more likely than middle-class parents to be working 2 or more jobs and working late hours. For the parents, this means having less time to read to children, help with homework, take them to the library, or supervise their play. They often lack basic resources like a reliable car, health insurance, and decent childcare. Moreover, poverty is strongly linked to depression in parents, leading to less consistent and effective parenting. From infancy onward, poor children are exposed to more punishment and less positive parental interactions than are middle-income children. Poverty has a devastating negative effect on academic achievements for both girls and boys. Poor children receive less cognitive stimulation and enrichment than wealthier children do. They are less likely to have a computer or internet access at home. Their schools cannot fill the gap because they are likely to have less qualified teachers, outdated facilities, and few educational materials. The physical environment of poverty includes higher exposure to toxins such as lead poisoning and air pollution, along with crowded and inadequate housing. For example, poor children are over 4 times as likely to have high levels of lead in their body, 3.6 times more likely to live in houses infested with rodents, and 2.7 times more likely to have not enough heat in the winter, compared with other children. Multiple stresses in the social and physical environment have a cumulative effect on poor children. I have focused on poor children in our own nation, but childhood poverty is a worldwide problem. In poor and developing countries, many children lack safe drinking water and basic sanitation. Their housing is particularly inadequate and may be located in flood zones, toxic waste areas, or other undesirable locations. They may not be able to go to school or even have a school to go to. Childhood poverty affects both boys and girls, but it is not gender equal in its effect. In the U.S., because boys are more likely to act out and cause trouble for others, their problems may receive more attention, and more programs are available to help. The problems that are more likely to afflict girls, such as underachievement, depression, and poor mental health, are less often noticed and treated. In developing countries, girls are often kept at home to do household work, denying them the education that could help lift them out of poverty. 2/3 of the world's people who cannot read or write are girls and women. Leaving childhood behind, puberty and adolescence. When does a child become an adult? Puberty is a series of psychological events that change a child into a person capable of reproducing. However, there is much more to being an adult than the capability to reproduce. The period after puberty and before adulthood, termed adolescence, is the time that a society allocates for young people to mature and grow into their adult roles. The adolescents must negotiate sexuality, independence, and personal identity, while being not yet an adult. The biological change of puberty and the social meaning of adolescence are closely intertwined. Because the biological changes take place in a cultural context that defines their meaning, for adolescent boys, the maturing body signifies an increase in status and power. As boys grow taller and more muscular, they are given more freedom. For girls, the maturing body signifies a more mixed status. It is wonderful to become a woman, and some girls eagerly await their first period and first bra. On the other hand, girls may not be granted more freedom. In fact, their independence may be curtailed. In this section, I discuss the physical changes of puberty and their social meaning. Changing bodies. Puberty begins with a rise in hormonal production that gradually causes the body to mature. For girls, the first external sign may be the growth spurt, or developmental of secondary sex characteristics, body, hair, and breasts. The growth spurt is not just a gain in height, but also a gain in body fat. The increase is necessary and normal. In order for a girl to begin menstruating, she must reach a critical level of body fat. Healthy adult women have up to twice as much body fat as healthy adult men. However, developing womanly curves conflict with society's norms for extreme thinness at the same time, as it makes girls' sexuality visible to all. Many girls are uncomfortable about their changing bodies. I was developing very early as a 6th grader, and I didn't like my body at all. My boobs were just so big that I am still busty, and they're huge, and I was a small person, and they got in my way, and I really hated them. I just remember feeling that I was going to grow up, and the only thing I would be good for was something like a Playboy bunny. During adolescence, there is a dramatic increase in girls' concerns about their weight. In a study of factors that predict body dissatisfaction, the most important factors were not only actually being overweight, but also the perceived pressure from others to be thin, a belief in a thin is better ideal, and lack of social support. White girls in particular tend to tie their self-esteem to their weight, whereas African American girls tend to be more satisfied with their bodies. For example, 40% of a large sample of African American girls and only 9% of white girls said that they felt attractive. Although body dissatisfaction was higher among the white girls, it was present in both ethnic groups. The preoccupation with weight can have serious health consequences. The preoccupation with weight can have serious health consequences. For example, girls may start smoking and using diet pills in an attempt to eliminate body fat. Some girls develop eating disorders. The onset of menstruation, termed menarche, is the most visible and dramatic sign of puberty. Menarche occurs at about 12 and a half years of age. European American girls reach menarche several months later than African American and Latina girls, and earlier than Asian American girls. This ethnic difference may be related to average body weight. However, there is a great deal of variability in its timing. Some girls reach menarche as early as 8. Virtually every woman remembers the day she got her first period. So I was 10 years old and didn't understand any of it. In fact, I misunderstood most of it. What I remember about it from the book was that somehow the menstrual blood came out on the outside of your lower abdomen, somehow like it seeped through your skin. So I told my mother, and it was like, oh. And she did seem rather pleased, but it wasn't like the kind of pleased where if I got a really good grade or the solo in the school play. She pulls out the Kotex kit, and that is when I began to connect. This is what it is. It doesn't come out of your stomach. When it came, I was in high school. I was a high school exchange student in Europe, staying with the family of a friend. I felt like I was out of control, that something was happening to me that I couldn't stop. I bled terribly all over the sheets and was horribly embarrassed telling my friend's aunt, especially since I didn't know the right words. Menstruation is hardly one of the common vocabulary words you have to learn. I felt like it was all happening to someone else, not me, like I was watching myself in a movie and now was this sexual being. I saw blood on my underwear and it was like I just sat on the toilet, and I'm like, Mom. She comes in and she was like, what? Well, honey, congratulations, you're a little lady now. I'm like, say what? Girls received both positive and negative messages about this aspect of becoming a woman. Although some studies have shown that women feel positive about menstruation as a sign of good health and an affirmation of womanhood, menstruation is more often associated with disgust, shame, annoyance, secrecy, and a list of do's and don'ts in our society, as well as in many others. In-depth interviews with 18 to 21-year-old American women who were asked to recall their menarche revealed that they were concerned with hiding, concealing, and managing menstruation, especially around boys. Even other girls, they were uncomfortable admitting menstruating, except to complain about it. Around each other and around their mothers, they used euphemisms and indirect languages to reference it. Menstruating women are still stigmatized. In one creative study, college students saw a woman accidentally drop a hair clip or a tampon in front of them. Students were then asked about their attitudes towards the woman, although they did not know that their response had nothing to do with the incident. When the woman had dropped a tampon, participants, both male and female, rated her as less likely incompetent and sat further away from her than when she had dropped the hair clip. The media contributes to stigmatization. Menstruation. For many years, menstrual products were banned from TV, radio, and magazine ads were so vague that it was hard to tell what was being advertised. Even today, ads for menstrual products are far from direct. A contents analysis of ads in 17 and Cosmopolitan found that they use idealized images or left women's bodies out of the picture entirely. In 2003, the FDA approved a continuous oral contraceptive, seasonal, designed to suppress menstruation. Medically, menstruation suppression is controversial, and there are no long-term studies of its effect. But a study of 22 articles in the popular press just before the debut of seasonal showed that very few mentioned the lack of long-term research. The most characterized menstruation is as messy, annoying, unhealthy, inconvenient, and unnecessary. Advocates of menstrual suppression were quoted twice as often as those who opposed it, and suppression was endorsed not only for a woman with severe menstrual problems, but for just anyone. This biased reporting is worrying in light of research showing that women's primary source of information about the risk and benefits of menstrual suppression is, you guessed it, the media. Menstrual suppression must be particularly appealing to adolescent girls who are self-conscious about their bodies and wish that puberty would just go away. The big pharmaceutical companies are ready to market this anxiety and stigma.